Well now, are you settled in? Let yourself relax, soften your gaze. You don't have to close your eyes, just let them blur a little. Feel the weight come off your shoulders and give yourself permission to slow down, because what you're about to hear is the first in a new collection of stories, each one whispered up from the dark corners of old Ireland. Quiet little tales with quiet little horrors, all designed to guide you softly out of your day and gently into the strange. We'll begin tonight in Dublin at the turn of the last century with a man named Michael Caffery and a set of letters that were never meant to be sent. The first tale of the night is called The Letters of Michael Caffery. Michael Caffery had been a postman all his life. 16 years on the same beat, delivering letters across the cobbled veins of Dublin's north side, Henrietta Street, Mountjoy Square, and the alleys near the Rotunda. Everyone knew him, everyone liked him. He was quiet, decent, and always on time. But in November of 1903, the letters started arriving. Not to his house, not at first, but inside his own satchel. He'd finish his deliveries, return to the depot, and as he'd empty his bag, there it would be. A single letter, no postage, no stamp, sealed with a thick smear of red wax, and on the front, his name, his address, written in his own handwriting. Not just similar, exact. He thought it was a prank at first, maybe the lads at the depot, but when he opened the envelope, a chill ran through him. Inside were 4 small, yellowed teeth, jagged, curved slightly, tiny as a thumbnail. He brought them to a friend at the butcher's, who laughed and said, "Those are rats' teeth, Michael. What kind of madness are you dealing with?" By the end of the week, he'd received 5 more, each one sealed in the same red wax, each one written in his own hand, and each one containing more teeth. Some letters had only 1, others had 8 or 9, all of them different sizes, some still red at the root. He stopped sleeping, he stopped eating. One morning he knocked on the door of St. Brendan's Asylum and begged them to take him in because he hadn't slept in 3 days. He said the rats were coming for him. He said he could feel their little paws under the floorboard. He said they were writing to him, that he was writing to himself in his sleep. The doctors admitted him for observation. They noted his fever, his paranoia, and when they returned to check on him that evening, they found his room silent at first. Then they heard a noise, a soft skittering from behind the door. They unlocked it slowly, and what they saw inside stayed with them for the rest of their lives. Michael Caffery was lying on the bed, soaked in blood, twitching and convulsing, but not alone. They were everywhere, hundreds of them, rats, pouring over him in a thick, squealing tide, their little paws slapping wet against his face, tails curling around his mouth and into his ears, their teeth jagged, glinting, gnawing at his fingers, his belly, his throat. And all the while, Michael just laughed, not in madness, but in guilt, because it had finally come back to him. Not the letters or the teeth, but the alley, that freezing winter, and the man he'd passed by, starving, collapsed, mumbling in Irish through sunken cheeks. A man who reached for Michael's coat and whispered with cracking lips, "Tá mé mar bhleis an ocras, na dean Diarmid Urim. I am dead with hunger, don't forget me." But Michael just stepped over him. The next morning, the man was dead, starved to death on the edge of the road, and no one had come. Some say Michael saw the face again in the asylum, through the mass of squealing rats. A hollowed man with black eyes and a mouth full of little yellow teeth. They say it was the Fargorta, the hunger ghost, who haunts those who ignore the starving, and that Michael Caffery had written his own name on those envelopes, not in ink, but in penance. And now let your breath come easier. There's nothing chasing you, no footsteps behind you, no rustle in the walls. Feel the weight of your body, feel the stillness of the room, and slip softly down into the next level of rest. Even if your eyes remain open, your thoughts can float further away. And the next tale of the night is entitled The Taking of Declan O'Dwyer. Declan O'Dwyer was known in the village of Lochain as a man of unusual kindness. He was the type to leave bread by the windows of the elderly, to fix a neighbour's gate without charge, and to nurse stray cats on his own time. They said there was never a cruel word from him, never a moment when he didn't offer help. And so, when Declan's hair turned pure white in a single night, and the following morning he was nowhere to be found, the town whispered that something unnatural had happened. But before all that, there was the night of the fire. Declan lived alone in a small house at the end of a gravel road near a wide, empty field. It had once been used for crops, but hadn't seen a harvest in years. On one windless evening, as the last of the sun sank low, he stood in his kitchen finishing his tea, when a strange sound drifted in through the back door. Music. It was faint at first, the pluck of strings, a fiddle, a bodhrán, laughter. He stepped to the back door and looked out across the field, and there, around a fire that hadn't been there the day before, were creatures, small and wiry, with eyes too large for their faces and skin like damp moss. They danced in circles, leaping and stomping with wild glee, playing music that seemed to come from no instrument at all. It was a ceilidh of something not quite of this world. Declan blinked, rubbed his eyes, but the sight remained. He hesitated, then cracked the door open, and in an instant, the very moment the door crossed the frame, the music stopped. The field was empty, just black soil and wind, no fire, no dancers, except in the middle of the field now stood a scarecrow, tall, wrong, and not his. It hadn't been there a minute ago. At first, he thought it a prank, one of the young fellas messing about, but something in his gut told him to be cautious. Still, he fetched his coat and lantern and stepped outside, walking out across the field towards the figure. And as he drew closer, the sense of unease grew. The scarecrow was crude, a frame of branches and straw, a face made of woven twigs, eyes hollow. Its head lolled to one side, like it had been struck or bent wrong. Declan stood just a few feet away from it now, staring. There was no movement, no wind, no sound. He swallowed. "Right," he muttered, "this is madness." And as he turned to go, the scarecrow's head snapped upright. Its eyes were glowing yellow like twilight suns, and they burned into him with a malice he'd never known. Declan stumbled back, frozen, and then the heat. Flames all around, the field was ablaze, the music returned, but it was twisted now, like glass shattering and bones snapping to a rhythm. Shadows danced in the firelight, the same creatures now circling him, their mouths grinning wide, showing rows of crooked, needle-thin teeth. He couldn't run, he couldn't move, and in the middle of it all, the scarecrow began to shift, its arms reaching out, wrapping around him, and he screamed as the fire engulfed them both. And so the next morning, old Mrs. Gildee saw smoke rising from the field. She sent her grandson to check, and when he returned, he said there was no fire, but something was there, a scarecrow, right in the middle. It looked almost real, he said, had clothes just like Declan used to wear, and from its wooden face, 2 yellow eyes stared back. Some say Declan was taken by the Chlorachan, a wild fae known to punish goodness when it served their darker purpose. For once every century they need a man of pure heart to be offered to whatever ancient force keeps them dancing through the centuries. And this time they picked Declan. Take a deep breath in and slowly let it go. There's nothing to fear, the fire is long gone, the scarecrow is still, and the night is yours. Let your body sink deeper into the mattress. Feel your limbs unwind, your breath soften, your mind slow. And if a part of you remembers Declan's tale in the morning, don't be surprised if you find yourself drawn back here again. The next story is just around the corner, so let your body grow heavier. Let your thoughts drift like ash in the dark. You're safe, and sleep will come. And the next tale is entitled Beside the Water. Danny Fitzgerald stood at the edge of the stone bridge, boots damp from rain, the smell of river moss thick in his nose. It was late. The moon hung crooked in the sky like it had been nailed there half-heartedly, and below him the water moved without hurry, black and wide, pulling gently at the rocks. He'd taken the walk from his house with no plan beyond this, no note, just the weight of things, the long, quiet sort of weight that presses on you not like a hammer, but like time. He gripped the old stone wall, staring down, and then came the voice. "You'll catch your death standing there with your collar open like that," it said. Danny didn't turn right away. The voice wasn't threatening. It wasn't even curious. It was just there, calm, older than him by the sound of it, thoughtful. "You've no business out this late," Danny muttered, not looking. "No," said the man, "but here I am." There was a silence. The stranger didn't move, didn't make a fuss, just leaned beside him on the wall, looking out over the same water. "Rough night?" the man asked eventually. Danny shrugged. "You ever just feel done?" The man nodded like he'd heard it before. "Is that why you're out here?" he said. "To finish something?" Danny didn't answer. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a flask. "The only thing worse than a sharp grief," he said, offering it, "is a dull one." Danny hesitated, then took it. "Did you ever lose someone?" Danny asked after a sip. "Aye," said the man. "But grief's a trickier thing than death. Sometimes what you lose is yourself, and you don't notice till there's nothing left worth saving." Danny glanced at him. He was dressed plainly, older, weather-worn face, thick coat, a calmness about him, but not the polished kind. The type of calm that's been dragged through the years and come out the other side quieter, not cleaner. "I'm not a madman," Danny said suddenly. "I'm not trying to make a scene." "I never said you were," said the man. It's all gone sideways. The job, the house, everything. No one would miss me. And I'm tired. God, I'm so tired." The man nodded gently. "So maybe it's not death you want. Maybe it's rest." Danny let that hang in the air. "You ever think," the man went on, "that maybe you're not broken? Maybe the world just handed you more than you could carry alone?" Danny blinked. "You're not weak for being crushed," the man said. "You're just human." Danny looked away. His eyes were stinging, and he hated that they were. "You know what's strange," the man said after a while. "Every man who's ever stood here, thinking of jumping, thinks he's the only one who ever did it. But it's always been full, this bridge, full of ghosts and near ghosts." "You think I'm weak?" Danny said. "I think you're still here," the man replied. The river bubbled softly. Somewhere in the trees an owl moved and the wind picked up. "What's your name?" Danny asked. The man smiled. "Doesn't matter much. Not tonight." Danny gave a tired laugh. "God, you're a strange fella." "I've been called worse," said the man. They stood in silence again, the night thick with quiet sort of knowing that only strangers can share. "You'll go back home," the man said after a while. "You'll sleep. You'll wake up angry. But then you'll go out and maybe you'll help someone cross a road, or maybe you'll just get a cup of tea that doesn't taste like piss, and that'll be enough for one day." Danny stared at the river, then nodded slow. "What if it's not enough? Then you get through one more, and that's how it works." The sky was turning the color of bruised stone, dawn not far off. Danny turned to say something, to ask him again maybe for his name, but the man was gone. Not a sound, not a step, just gone. And there was no flask in Danny's hand anymore. He walked home, shivering, somehow lighter. And when he reached the corner by the old chapel, he saw something carved into the stone there, something he'd never noticed before. It read, "Anam Cara." It meant soul friend, a spirit of ancient Irish myth said to appear in moments of great need, said to guide those close to despair, not with answers, but with presence. That night, on the bridge, Danny had met his. Now take a deep breath in and out. Let your shoulders relax. Whatever weight you're carrying, let it slip just for now. And if you're still with us and still listening, let your entire body feel just a little heavier as you drift into the next level of rest. You've earned it. And now let's move on to the next tale. And this is called The Fortune Teller. They say she once lived in a little green wagon on the edge of town, where the bog met the road and the ground was always damp beneath their boots. Nellie Byrne, her name was, fortune teller by trade, or by reputation, more like. Some said she read tea leaves. Others said she used a pendulum made from the tooth of a drowned priest. But nobody ever said she lied. One evening a man arrived just after dusk. The rain had stopped, but the sky still looked sore about it. He knocked once, and she told him to come in before he even touched the handle. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face quiet, like he'd come to settle something. Nellie sat him down across from her, lit a little stub of candle between them, and took his hands in hers. The glow from the flame bounced off the brass trinkets behind her, but didn't touch his eyes. "Let's see," she whispered. She closed her eyes and leaned in. "I see a man, strong but tired. I see a woman, kind, smiling. And I see two little girls. They're giggling under a table. No, wait. They're hiding in a wardrobe. And the woman, she's crying. And the man's shouting. He's had a drink, or more than one. There's something in his hand. A candle." The man stayed silent. Nellie's brow creased. "Now there's smoke," she said. "The woman's trying to open the door, but it won't budge. Something heavy's pressed against it. Flames, they catch the curtains. They spread. She blinked and touched her temple. It's spreading fast. They're screaming. The man's face didn't change. Nellie's voice cracked. The man, he tries to open the door, but he can't. There's no way out. And then the screaming stops. She shuddered. There's no more sound, just fire, the girls, the woman gone. The air grew warmer in the room. Nellie sniffed the air, suddenly stiff. Why do I smell burning wood? She said. Her hands were trembling now. You never made it out, she said, staring past him. You never escaped. He didn't flinch. He just smiled. She looked into his eyes. It was you. Right then, the candle between them burst, the wax hissing as it spat across the cloth. Fire caught the edge of her table. She jumped back, heart thudding as the flame licked higher. But the man, he was gone. All that remained in the seat across from her was smoke dispersing in the shape of who he was. Some say Nellie survived the blaze, dragging herself out just before the wagon collapsed on itself. Others say she never told another fortune after that night, but word spread quickly, and the whispers never stopped. That sometimes, when the air grows thick and warm for no reason at all, it's because he's sitting across from you, waiting for someone to tell him what he already knows. Let your eyes soften, and as you breathe in, feel your belly expand, and as you breathe out, feel your belly flatten. Let your thoughts drift away like that thin grey smoke and ease down into the next level of relaxation. And now for the next tale, and it's called The Laughing Room. There's a padded room in the far wing of St. Malachy's Asylum, a building that once sat cold and forgotten on the outskirts of Leitrim, back when the country was still stitched together with fog and silence. They called it the Laughing Room because of the man inside, Noel Barrett. He wore a straitjacket most of the time, not because he was violent, but because when they tried to loosen it, he laughed even harder. It was the kind of laughter that lightens a room. It was jagged, like something trying to claw its way out of his chest. His mouth hung in a grin so wide it had split the corners of his lips. The gums bled constantly. His teeth were long and yellowed, not sharp, not monstrous, just wrong. He looked like a man whose face had been stretched by joy, but whose eyes never once reflected it. Nurses hated doing rounds past his door. You'd hear it, that laugh echoing down the corridor long before you reached the cell. And yet he never spoke. Not a word, not to the doctors, not during evaluations, not when offered tea. Just that laughter, as though something was hilarious and only he could see it. Back in 1907, Dr. Aidan Moran had made it his mission to break through to Noel. He believed madness had roots, childhood trauma, repressed guilt, something logical, treatable. So one rainy October morning, he opened the hatch and stepped into the padded room. Noel sat in the corner, like always, knees drawn up, eyes closed, smile as wide as ever. He didn't open his eyes, he just laughed. The doctor crouched. "Noel, do you remember where you're from?" he asked. A pause, a slow inhale from the corner, then a ragged wheeze of laughter, growing, climbing. It filled the room like smoke. "Noel," the doctor tried again. "Why do you laugh?" Still nothing but that awful sound, a rattling, feral joy. Dr. Moran noticed the trembling on Noel's fingers beneath the straitjacket straps, the occasional twitch of the head. He made a few more attempts, soft questions, logical ones, but eventually he gave up, standing and turning towards the door. And that's when the laughing stopped. The silence hit him like a slap. He turned back and saw Noel staring at him for the first time. The man's grin hadn't moved, but the eyes, dead grey, unblinking, locked onto the doctor's throat. And then Noel began to laugh again, but this time slower. Each laugh timed like a clock. 2 days later, Dr. Moran was found dead in an alleyway just off Dorset Street, throat slit clean, no witnesses, no suspects. When word reached the asylum, some of the staff muttered about coincidences, but the older nurse, Maura Kinsella, she knew, because that night, as she passed the laughing room on rounds, she saw Noel Barrett sitting perfectly still, his eyes wide, his grin broader than ever, and in the corner of the cell, she swore she saw her, a woman-shaped shadow half glimpsed, hair wiry and grey, eyes and mouth stitched shut. She crouched there like a parasite, watching Maura through the flap in the door. Maura didn't sleep that night, and when she quit the following week, she never spoke of it again. The legend only grew. Noel never aged, or if he did, it didn't show. Visitors claimed he looked wrong in some way they couldn't explain, like his body moved too slow or his skin didn't match his voice. The laugh was always there, echoing, growing worse before a death. One by one, the cruel nurses, the violent patients, even a ward manager, all gone under strange circumstances, slashed, drowned. One hanged himself after reporting he'd seen her face in his dreams. Eventually, word reached a retired folklorist, Thomas O'Driscoll, who'd heard tales of a creature from the old world. A twisted take on the Lananchi, not the beautiful muse who stole the souls of poets, but a punisher of the cruel. A spirit that latched itself to one man and one man alone, a living vessel. She could see the rot in his soul, and through him she delivered the cost. Years passed, the asylum was condemned, the record sealed, but still, they say, if you find your way to what's left of St. Malachy's, past the collapsed chapel and the rusted gate, there's a padded room with a single chair, and sometimes, if you wait long enough, you'll hear it, the sound of laughter in the dark, and behind you, a breath on your neck, and a face you're not meant to see. Let yourself settle. Feel your chest rise and fall. No need to change your breath, just become aware of it. The cool air as it enters, the warmth as it leaves. Let your eyes soften, and with each breath, imagine you're drifting deeper into quiet, deeper into the next level of relaxation. Let the silence hold you. You're safe here. And now for the next tale, a tale called Johnny Delaney's Magic Fiddle. They said there wasn't a man in the parish who could string a tune like Johnny Delaney. He was a fixture at weddings, wakes and ceilidh, a wiry man with dancing eyes and a chin that jutted proudly when he bowed the first note. Every Saturday night, without fail, you'd find him perched on a stool in the copper tap, coaxing laughter and tears out of his battered old fiddle while the crowd roared and reeled to his rhythm. The fiddle had been his father's, and his father's before him. The grain of the wood was worn smooth from generations of hands, the varnish long since rubbed away. And though it was old, it had never once failed Johnny, until the night the boy from Carrick broke into the bar half-tanked and full of spite. He knocked Johnny's stool clean out from under him and sent the fiddle clattering to the floor. The sound it made, a dull, final snap, hushed the pub like a funeral bell. Johnny carried the pieces home in his arms, not speaking a word. He laid them gently on the kitchen table and stared at them for hours, nursing a cup of tea that had long gone cold. He couldn't afford a new one, and anyway, it wouldn't be his. So the next morning he rose early and wandered into the forest behind the cottage, past the known paths, past the old walls blanketed in moss, until he came to a tree that grew strange and tall. Its bark shimmered faintly like dew in the moonlight, though there was no sun to glint it. Johnny didn't question it. He took what he needed and left. He spent the week carving, sanding, patching. He worked by firelight and silence, his cat watching warily from the windowsill. And when the final string was tightened and tuned, he lifted the bow and played a low, sweet waltz. And that night, it began. A wind rose without warning, and the latch lifted itself on the kitchen door. Tiny feet padded across the flagstones. Candles flared, and there they were, no bigger than a child's hand, with wild hair and eyes like gleaming coal, the fairy folk dancing in a circle around his stool. They said nothing. They only danced. Johnny froze. Then he played again, another waltz, then a reel, then a jig, and they spun and leapt with joy. When dawn came, they vanished in a flash of blue mist. In the morning, Johnny opened his door to find a basket of fresh eggs, soft cheese, and rich wine resting on the step. The next night they returned, and again he played. For a time it was magic, the food never stopped. His aches and stiffness vanished, his spirits lifted. He played longer, stronger, faster. The people of the village said he looked 20 years younger. But then he tried to skip a night. His fingers were stiff, his mind cloudy. He left the fiddle on the table and went to bed. At midnight, the latch lifted again. He awoke to cold breath on his face and the light slap of bare feet across the stone. And in the morning, he found his body covered in bruises, pale purple shapes like tiny fists. He didn't dare miss again. The next night, he played with trembling hands as the fairies watched silently from the corners of the room. Their smiles were too wide now, their heads cocked too far. When one of them opened its mouth to giggle, he saw it had no tongue, just a black void that sucked in the firelight. The gifts still came, but they rotted faster now. The eggs cracked, the cheese stank, the wine soured. But if he stopped playing, the bruises would return. One night he tried a slow air, a sorrowful tone, the kind that made a man cry without knowing why. The fairies stopped dancing. They stood still, staring, and then they hissed, a sound like boiling water. One ran up and bit his hand. He screamed and swatted it away, but the others followed, not with joy now, with hunger. They swarmed his legs, clung to his arms, scratched his face, and still he played. He had to. Because the music, it kept them from tearing him to pieces. And now that the last tale has been told, and your mind has travelled far from here, let your thoughts grow quiet. Let your breath deepen, smooth and steady, in and out. Feel your fingers grow soft, your body still. And if your mind begins to drift, don't be surprised if your hand leaves behind a little trace, a red button pressed, a soft touch on the thumbs up, or even a few quiet words shared below. You might not remember doing it, but part of you will. Now rest, you're safe, you're home, you're free. Good night.